Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to walk you through today's presentation. So let's just dive right in. My name is Brent. I'm a Sage Intacct consultant with Vision 33, and I'm based in Vancouver. So my role specifically at the company is to really help finance teams learn how to get the most out of Sage Intacct. So things like streamlining processes, improving reporting, or just setting them up for better and smarter, faster decisions using their system. And joining me today is Matthew, my colleague, and he'll be walking us through a demo of Sage Intacct in a little bit to show us a little of this in action. Quick rundown of today's session. So, agenda, I'll be starting with just a 5-minute intro, explaining a little who we are and Sage as well. And then Matthew will take over for about 40 minutes for the demo, and we'll wrap things up, of course, with some questions that you may have. So before we jump in, just a little of who Vision 33 is and kind of why we matter as well. So what we do know is, of course, choosing the right software is a key decision. It's very important. But we find that really choosing the right partner matters more. And so, what we bring is that deep industry experience, long-term customer relationships, and we're also a leader in the Sage community. And so, really, implementation, if you look at it, is just the start. And what we do is we stay with you along the way with that ongoing support and customer care to make sure that everything is properly taken care of. And customers like to count on us because of our consistency. We have reliability. And then, of course, what we like to do is just create good customer experiences with the goal of turning accounting headaches and frustrations into real growth for them. And like Sage, Vision 33 is also a global company, but the little difference is we like to operate and always have on more of a smaller business type of mindset. So our core operations are in the US, the UK, and Canada, but we have certified consultants and CPAs ready to support you locally as well. Here are some of our wonderful customers. They're running Sage Intacct. They come from all over the spectrum. Some of the mains include nonprofits, SaaS, technology, professional services, a great fit as well, and so many more. I'm sure most of you have heard of Sage and done your initial research, but here's just a few highlights for a summary. So as we can see, Sage Intacct supports a broad spectrum of industries and offers industry-specific functionality. Although Vision 33's, we find our biggest footprint is nonprofit, where we have about 35 to 40% of our customer base through nonprofit. Really, what we like to do is build expertise in all of these verticals to help all of our customers, regardless of what industry you're in, to make sure that we're guiding them down the right path and making sure that we're keeping true to your sector's best practices for reporting and accounting. Quick snapshot of Sage's global reach. It's a big company and it's also still growing. And here's another snapshot that shows basically what Sage Intacct's global reach is as a product. For any people who are interested in some numbers that are underlying, Sage Intacct has to do with its cybersecurity. It's really as secure as it gets. You no longer need to worry about your data security, just backups, downtime, costly upgrades, maintenance, that sort of thing. None of that is involved. It just works all the time in the cloud. And so speaking of which, Sage Intacct wasn't retrofitted for the cloud. It was born in the cloud. So meaning from its first line of code, it was created to be a cloud native solution. And so one benefit of that is it's affordable, easy to use, and finance teams can use and pay for just the specialized finance features and tools that they need without overpaying and then overutilizing tools that aren't needed. And so it does this through its modular capabilities. So it's a modular solution. Again, you just pay for what you need to use now, and you can add on more functionality or remove as you scale or the opposite. So because of this, Sage is referred to as a best of breed solution. Its open API connections make it easy for you to seamlessly integrate whatever you're using now. So whether it's popular like CRM or any system that you're using now, it can connect to it. Now, for those maybe integrations that aren't native to be able to connect to Sage, what we do is we use our in-house proprietary connector called Saltbox. And so this can connect maybe the non-popular third-party apps to Sage. You can go on the Sage Marketplace, which is like a search engine to allow you to see what list of third-party apps are integratable with Sage. And then anything that's not, you can use something like Saltbox to make sure it connects. And just a final word about Sage Intacct's embedded AI. So just a heads up, we don't have the Copilot Sage AI built into our demo just yet, but we did want to introduce it to you just to keep it on your radar. Basically, you could see it as your smart side productivity assistant. So it doesn't do the work for you, but it gives you the answers you need and trust you could search for just for a smoother, faster close, or to find outstanding items or any anomalies quicker for a faster month-end close. So be sure to ask us about it when you happen to talk to us. So that's it for me. So thanks. Appreciate it. Matthew, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. As Brent mentioned, my name is Matthew. I'm going to walk us through our demo of Sage Intacct today. Sage Intacct, as Brent mentioned, is a cloud-based environment. So just a quick couple of notes on the value that brings immediately. Just first and foremost, you can access your system anywhere, anytime from any device. You're no longer limited to a specific machine at your office or needing to have a program installed on, say, your personal computer. It's purely browser based. So you run it in an internet browser. So as long as you have a device that can access the internet and an internet connection and you remember your credentials, you can log in and do everything you see me do here today at home, on a personal computer, in a Starbucks, at the airport while you're waiting for a flight on a tablet. You can view dashboards and run reports and whatever you like. So just immediate visibility into your organization whenever you want. Next would be, of course, with on-prem servers, you're going to have server maintenance, server security, and they take up space in your office. That goes away immediately. You don't need any servers. Everything is safe and secure, backed up through Sage's data centers and our partners with AWS and Microsoft. So no worries there. And last but not least would be the updates to the solution. So I know with on-prem solutions, if an update is released for that solution, part of the responsibility does get passed on to you. You log in, you get a pop-up that says, hey, there's an update available. You either have to install the update yourself and wait for it to finish. And I know some organizations will actually hire a consultant to come in and install certain updates, such as tax updates. None of that is required. Intacct updates automatically 4 times per year. It's major releases. And then for minor, I don't like talking about tax as a minor update, but they do that as like a, kind of like a hot fix, I'll call it, but it is still an update. For example, when the HST rate in Nova Scotia changed back in April, that was put into the system through like a smaller release, and it was there probably a month early. So clients could see that the update was there, and as soon as April 1 hit, that just started to take effect. They literally had to do nothing. The updates, the major updates, as I mentioned, 4 times per year. They're very seamless. They'll happen outside of your regular business hours. They will not make the solution slow. They won't make it unavailable. They will not break any third-party integrations you might have. Such a seamless update that if it weren't for the home screen that I'm on that tells me release 3 is here, I might not even notice that the system was updated unless you notice some changes to a list screen or an input screen, or if you navigate into like the configuration screen of a particular module and you notice that there are checkboxes or selections to turn on new functionality. But if you are curious what did change with the release, you can click on read the release notes. I will bring you into a full table of contents organized by region, first of all. And in a moment, it will load a table of contents here on the left-hand side of the screen. And then you can kind of go down on a module by module basis and look at what has changed in each module, make notes of the functionality that are of value to you that affect the modules you have in your system, and then go out and learn more about them and decide whether or not you want to take advantage of those updates. They're not small updates. You can see in R3, we had changes to AP, AR, cash management, consolidations. I'll skip construction because it's actually a different solution. Contract management, dashboards, employee expenses, fixed assets, GL, and so on. So they're pretty large updates, and they normally do come with some really good functionality. You also will get access to the release calendar at the top of the screen. This will tell you when each release will be issued. So by the time Friday strikes of this week, because these are always Fridays, by the way, by the time Friday strikes, my home screen out here will actually say 2025 release 4 is upcoming, and you'll be able to click on read the release notes for R4. And when you drill in here, you will see what's going to change with R4. So you get like a week ahead of time. You can see what's going to change and try to gear up for it. And as that changes, as will the release calendar, this will update for the calendar year of 2026. So these dates will be available for 2026. So you can put them in your calendar as a reminder to come look for new functionality. These dates are in stone. Sage does not miss these dates, and this will be released for 2026 by Friday, I would imagine. And you'll know when to expect the releases in that year. So with that out of the way, let's look at the system itself. Intacct does a lot of things really well, from your core accounting modules like accounts payable, accounts receivable, some more advanced AP functionality in the purchasing module and order entry module. This is like more of a procurement workflow module, your GL, your cash management, your general company settings, and so on. But if you need additional modules, like if you have a lot of fixed assets and you want to manage your fixed assets in Intacct, there's a module for that. If you're an inventory company, there's an inventory module. If you're a project company, you have billable projects. There's the projects module, which comes with the time module. So there's always more modules you can build on, and you don't have to turn these modules on day one. If you say, right now we don't have enough fixed assets, but down the road we might, you wait until you feel the need for it, where the cost benefit analysis makes sense to have it in the system, and then we just come turn it on and configure it. So you pay for what you need from the start, and then you build on as you grow. So it does all of those things really, really well, and we'll see some of that. But where it really separates itself from the competition, in my opinion, is the financial reporting capabilities, the ability to isolate your data, the ability to tag out your data and get to it easily so you can extract the data you need to drive your decision-making processes. The backbone of what makes that so easy in Intacct comes from what we call dimensions in Intacct. So out of the box, you'll get access. Everybody has access to the entity and location dimension. These are a little different than the rest of the dimensions, the entity and location, because the entities, first of all, are your different operating entities. If you're working for an organization that has multiple businesses with separate tax IDs, and then location is always a sub dimension of a particular entity. So it has to be, a location has to be linked to an individual entity. Whereas dimensions such as the classes, the departments, your employees, your items, and you get items even if you're not an inventory company, we just set them up as non-inventory items. They can be shared across all of your entities. And what these do, and the way I like to talk about them, is in a couple of different ways. First of all, think of them as buckets of reporting. So if you ever find yourself saying the sentences or statements, I need to be able to see my revenue by X. I need to be able to see my gross profit by Y. I need to be able to see my expenses by Z. And I use P&L kind of by design. You can use them for balance sheets, balance sheet items if you need, but generally people leverage them on the P&L. Whatever that variable is, that X, Y, or Z, those will become your dimensions in your system. And don't get too caught up on the terminology of departments or classes or locations or items. I can make this read sectors. I can make it read Matthew. I can make it read whatever I like. So it's just the generic out of the box name. So you create your list, and this does a couple of things for you. If you're in a system that doesn't have dimensions, but you need this kind of breakdown, maybe you need to track your revenue across different departments, and you don't have a dimension type attribute to allow you to do that. Every GL account that you want to be able to track across sales, services, admin, marketing, or IT, it's multiplied by 5. So you have the GL account, and then you have a sub account of -100, -200, -300, -400, -500, and then you move on to the next GL account. And that bulks your chart of accounts out really, really quick. It makes it hard to manage. It makes financial reporting management a lot more difficult because you have so many more GL accounts. And then anytime you want to make a new GL or a new department, you're not making one, you're making 5. So it just increases your workload pretty consistently. And of course, you're not stuck to sales, services, admin, marketing, IT. You create these. You decide what the values are here that you can choose from, right? So you can have as many here as you need. And we can do parent-child relationships so you get some roll-up functionality. Just really powerful. And the way it works is instead of having a separate GL account with a sub account, we just have these separate lists. So as I'm tagging any transaction in the system, whether it's a journal entry, an AP invoice, an AR invoice, literally any transaction that hits your books, you tag a combination of a GL account, such as like rent expense here, and then you choose the assignment that it should be to each dimension level, and you tag your data out kind of like this. You can choose as many or as few or no dimensions on GL accounts as you need. There, like, if the dimension is there, you can choose to pick one and allocate that out to a particular dimension, or you can not. Now we can make certain dimensions mandatory for certain GL accounts if that's a bit of GL validation you want to have. Like I can go into my rent expense here and I can edit this GL account and I can say anytime I use this GL account, I need someone to pick a department because that drives a lot of our financial reporting. So we want to make sure everything is always allocated out. So you can force it to be mandatory if you want to. And what this does for you is it gives you your data almost at any level that you could want it. Like if I were to put in a transaction here where I use the same GL account of rent side by side, this gives me the ability to run a GL detail report or a P&L and see my total for rent. Like if my two debits here were $500 and $600, I could run a P&L or a general ledger detail report and see the 1100 total and not see this breakout. I could filter my P&L or my general ledger detail report and say, show me only my things for my sales department and just get the 500. Or I could run it for all of my departments at once and tell the GL detail report to display the department that each one was tagged to. So if I want to export to Excel and do some pivot tables, I can do that. It really just gives you all the flexibility you could be looking for. So a quick example of that, if I were to come in and say I want to run a general ledger detail report, and I'm going to just pick a date range here of January. Whoops, wrong box. I'm going to pick January of 2019 because that's where 2019 is where the data lives in this demo environment. I'm going to go to the end of March. I'm going to tell the system I want to run this on all of my P&L accounts. And I'm not going to make a particular selection on a department. I'm just going to leave it blank, but I'm going to tell the system, show me the department that was tagged at every line level. I'm also going to tell the system, show me my vendor name so that when I get to my payables, I can see the vendors that we issued the payables to. And I'm going to tell it to show me my customer name as well. So when we're looking at revenue, we can see the customer and you'll kind of get an idea of the flexibility you can get here with these reports. So this will take a moment to load because I ran it for a few GL accounts and all of my departments. So you see here, it shows me my revenue. The revenue here is for department 200. It shows me my customer name on my revenue GL accounts as well. If I scroll down, a lot of the revenue is really for the services department, but we do have some here. It looks like this is probably sales. And if I scroll down and I get into my expenses, you'll see a lot more variation here between the departments. There's just a couple of revenue driving departments in this system, but when it comes to operating expenses, it's going to be across the majority of our departments. So you see here, we're in salary and wages. So we can salary and wages for department 100, department 200, department 300, 400, 500. Now, the GL detail report in Intacct is also really cool for a couple of reasons. If you don't want to see the IDs of the department, because you say, I can't remember what department 500 is or 400, eventually you would if you only have 5 or 6, but I do have clients that have like over 100 departments. You can tell the general ledger detail report to display your department name instead of the department ID, or show both of them. You get some flexibility there. So just to kind of show you how that works, it's just a couple of clicks. I should have shortened up my date range so this would run a little bit quicker, but that's okay. It doesn't take too long. And now you see it shows the department name as well. So that's how you can like look at your GL account as a whole. You get the total at the bottom, of course, for the time period, but you also get the breakout of the different departments if you want it. Now, if you want to filter a report, I can come in and I can click customize and I can say, I want to run a general ledger detail report, but I only want to see transactions that hit my marketing department. And then I can click on view. And what's going to happen here is this report's going to be much shorter because marketing does not drive any revenue. So we're going to jump right into the expense accounts, right into salaries. And you can see that my GL detail report instantly filtered just for my marketing department. So it's really great for that. And you can choose multiple dimensions and kind of use them in combination with one another. So if I change this here to 200, just so I can get an example of a customer up in my revenue, you can use these in combination with one another. So I can say, I want to see things that are for my services department, but I'm doing some analysis on my customer of costless insurance. I again can go to run my general ledger detail report and say, show me only transactions for costless insurance that hit my services department. And you can go ahead and do that. And then it filters out again. You can see it's very consistent here. So really, really great stuff. So that's on, like a general ledger detail report. Now, when it comes to financial reporting, you get pretty well the same options, but it's a little bit nicer when it gets to financial reports. And that's what, you know, most people are looking for here. So I'll come in and I'll run a general P&L, and I'll just run my generic P&L. I built out this P&L with the specific columns that it has, the groupings that you'll see of the GL accounts of the revenue and expenses. These are the out of the box groupings. I just want to let you know that we can make your P&L or your balance sheet look however you need it. You don't need to have these subcategories. Very few clients use the out of the box P&L. Some clients will use the out of the box balance sheet because the balance sheet is pretty standardized. But when it comes to P&L, it's kind of customized to your specific company. But the columns I did choose to put here. So I have my current month. I did run it for December of 2019. I'm showing my prior month. I'm showing a period variance, right? 42 minus 30 is 12. I'm not worried about the dollars and change there. And then I've run in my last column is a full year, my entire year. So I want to highlight the net income for the entire year, the 2.526. Maybe after looking at this, say, this is fantastic. This gives me a lot of stuff that I need. But what I'd like to see now is a P&L for my full year, but I want to see it broken out by my individual departments. You will have a separate report ready to go. And when we run this report this time, very quickly, we will all of a sudden just get a P&L for each one of my individual departments. You're going to notice this no department here. This happened before we had the ability to make certain dimensions mandatory for certain GL accounts. So these are transactions that got put in the system with the department left blank at the line level, but we can't stop this from happening. But you see here, it's fully reconciled to the 2.526. So it gets all of your data. Now, just like the GL detail report, I can also filter this report. If I say, I have a manager of admin, I have someone who's the manager of my IT department and someone who's the manager of my marketing department and so on, and I want to send them a P&L just for their department, they shouldn't be able to see IT or marketing or sales. They're not on a need to know basis for those departments. When you're running this report, again, you can just use your filters to say, just show it to me for my sales department or just show it to me for my marketing department. When I choose marketing, I'll get a much more concise report again. Marketing doesn't drive any revenue. And since I'm not showing departments that have revenue, it can, cut those GL accounts off of this report. And then we see basically a statement of expenses for my marketing department. The reports, of course, are fully drillable. So first of all, under G&A, we probably have more sub-layers. We do. We have copying and printing and finance charges. So just so you can see the kind of structures that you can get under your financial reports, lots of roll-up, lots of capability here. And if I click on a dollar amount, that will bring me into a GL detail report for whatever GL accounts are included in that subgroup. So there are a couple here. From a GL detail report, I can click a dollar value again. That will bring me back to a source transaction. In this case, it actually is an allocation journal entry. So that's why I come to a journal entry. But if this were an AP transaction or an AR transaction, it would drill me back right to that source transaction. So this breakout, by the way, that I just did by department, you can do this with any dimension that you use in the system: class, department, employee, vendor, customer, location, entity, item, whatever it may be. And it's really easy to do. It's so easy that I'll make a quick change to this report. Maybe after looking at this report, you say, okay, that's fantastic, but I would like to see my revenue under my different categories, how it relates to the different items that we sell in this company. We can come into that exact same report, and this is really how simple it is. We come to our rows. They're already summarized. We click on the header level for revenue so that it'll go down through all my revenue groups. And I say, I want to see my revenue, but I want to see it broken out by the different items that we sell. And just with like 3 or 4 clicks, if I run this report again, it'll do that. It'll show me my subscription revenue for my user full licenses, my usage items. They have very generic names in here, just demo names, but you get the item. You get the idea. These are individual items in the company. And I can break my columns out separate. That's kind of the exact same way that it's done. So really, really flexible to allow you to really just get down to the level of data that you need to drive some decision-making processes in your organization. Building off of the financial reports in Intacct comes the dashboard functionalities in Intacct. So I'm going to drop down into an entity level to bring up some dashboards just because it's friendlier that way. So I'm going to jump in. First of all, I'm going to show you my list of dashboards. So you can have as many dashboards in your system as you need. There's no added charge for a certain number of dashboards. You have these out of the box. They're yours to build. You can have 50, 500. If you have that many dashboards, like why? Well, I might ask why, maybe, but you get the idea. You can have as many as you want here. Your dashboards, they can be role based, they can be user based, they can be available to everybody on a dashboard by dashboard basis. So like AP manager, AR manager, CFO, cash analysis, I can pick and choose who in my system can and cannot see each individual dashboard. So you still get a lot of data security there. You don't have to worry that you're going to let people see things they shouldn't be able to see. So this dashboard is built for a CFO. At the top here, we have a line graph, which is essentially our P&L. The top line is our revenue. The bottom line is our expenses. The middle line here in orange is our net income. We do have a key at the bottom of the graph to show us that. We have some performance indicators. I might call them report cards in a moment. That is our nickname in here for them. These are meant to show like comparative values. So we're showing our services revenue versus our budget. We're showing our total revenue versus the prior month. We're showing our labor costs versus the prior month, our chargeability rate versus prior month, showing our operating expenses versus budget, and our operating margin versus prior month. And we've got a horizontally stacked bar graph, a vertically stacked bar graph. We have a pie graph. Then we have more report cards. This time, this one's showing against 3 months prior, and it's showing the variance in dollars rather than percentage. That is yours to choose, as is the comparative time frame that you pick. Like this can be current year to date versus prior year to date, maybe this month versus last month, this quarter versus last quarter, this quarter versus the same quarter of the prior year. Like it's really flexible. You can pick what you want to compare against. We scroll down, we've got more graphs, we've got more report cards, we've got more graphs again. This is built out to kind of be too much on purpose, just to show you the different options that you have in here. And this is not all of them. Now, the graphs on these dashboards are really great for a number of reasons. The least great one is they're a little interactive. I can click on my key and I can isolate my net income line. I can add those lines back with a click. I can do the same thing here on either one of these graphs. Just allows you to kind of isolate the part of the graph you're interested in. There's a show data button in the corner of every graph. So then it will instantly put out the absolute dollar amount here very quickly. It's nice to be able to just do on a whim. And again, I can do that for any graph that we have here. So if you build a graph, this is available. But what's best about these graphs, since they are derived from financial reports, they maintain their drill down functionality. So they give you your data summarized and quickly and in a nice visual representation. But then if you want to go from here and really dive into the data, if I click on my revenue for August 31st, I hover, I can see that it's 1.23 million. If I want to see those details, I can click that revenue dot. That will open up the revenue portion of my P&L for August of 2019. If I click on an expense dot, it will open up the expenses portion of my P&L. And I think everybody can probably put one and one together and guess what happens if I click on a net income dot, it will bring me back to my full P&L. And then from here, I can continue to keep drilling backwards, right to the source data, right to a general ledger detail report. So the drill down functionality is great. I think it's really convenient because it doesn't take you off of your dashboard. My drill downs popped open in new windows, so I can just close a couple of windows and I'm back on my dashboard. And they also are the same as the reports. They can be filtered for particular dimensions, and you can pick and choose the dimension filters that show on the top of each dashboard. So the most notable one graph that will change is this operating expenses by department, right? This shows me my operating expenses between all of my different departments. If I choose a particular department, if my filter works, this should just become one solid pie because I've filtered for just one department, and it will do exactly that. I filtered for particular department. It was the services department. So now the pie graph is only going to show my services department in this graph, or just so you can kind of see that it does work, the filters that is. It normally does not take this long to load. It is a demo environment. They tend to have less bandwidth gone to them. I'm not going to wait much longer for this graph. There it goes. So now it just shows me for my services department. That's one example of a dashboard. My line graph changed quite drastically as well. If I want to jump to another dashboard, just to give you some idea, like a controller dashboard, this one's going to have a little bit different information on it. We are going to see report cards at the top this time. We have a close through summary. If you're really paying attention, you might be asking, why is my GL closed up to 2017, but my AP is 2024, and then other ones are 2018? In an actual company, this would be a bit of a red flag. You probably want to go check this, but demo environment, just me playing around while I'm showing people stuff. Then we have a P&L versus budget. I could put conditional formatting on here to show my variances in like green or red, depending on if it's we're above or below budget. If I scroll down, I do have a graph here with conditional formatting in it. This is more of a scale than, an if statement. The higher the number gets, the darker it's highlighted. I have some approval lists here. So these are showing in this list for me because I can go process these approvals. If Brent were to log into this environment and come look at this dashboard, these lists would not show for him because he is not the approver, not available to approve them. So they'd be empty. So just one more example of a dashboard there quickly. Now, those are financial dashboards. People also like the dashboards for other things, such as maybe your month-end close. Because in Intacct, you can build things like checklists, and on the dashboards, you can put quick links into different things. So we have a dashboard here that has a month-end close checklist on it. This is nice because you can actually assign each piece of the month end out to a user in your system. And then rather than you having to call Nikki or go to Ryan's office or email Emma, they should be updating this checklist. And then you can just come to this dashboard to see where you stand on your month end processes. Just a nice way to keep information flowing more efficiently. Again, we have our close through summary. It's important for month end. We then have some custom navigation into some month end activities like reconciling your bank and closing your subledgers. We got some report shortcuts into your general month-end reports, your trial balance, your GL detail, your financial statements, your vendor aging, your customer aging, and so on. And again, more approval lists, because in Intacct, when things are in a state of submitted, they do not post. So they will try to post once they're approved. So if someone tries to approve this and then the month of December 2019 is closed, it'll try to post and the system will say your period is closed. So you do have to get your approvals processed before you close the month. So a nice reminder here. So just some examples of dashboards, financial reporting and dashboards. So moving away from financial reporting and dashboards, Intacct is also really, really great for companies that have multiple companies under their umbrella. So if I go to my consolidation and my organization view here, you'll get an idea of what I mean. So the parent company is a software company, but they have individual businesses with individual tax IDs. And they have one in Australia, they have one in Canada, they've got one in South Africa, they've got a couple in the US, and they've got one in the UK. So all of these companies are under the same umbrella. I don't need to log out and log back in if I want to put in some payables for Canada, but then I want to put in some payables or some receivables or journal entries for any of the other companies. I can simply click my drop-down list right here and pick the company that I want to do work for. Now, just to pause for 1 second. If you remember when I talked about the dimensions at the beginning, I talked about entities and locations and how they were different from the rest of the companies. So if I'm in USA Company 1, I can, when I'm coding any transaction, I can pick any department that's in my system. I can pick any project that's in my system if that's the way we set it up. And I could pick any item and I could pick any class. But when it comes to the location, so if we look back at this screen, my entity is in green. So USA Company 1 is my entity. The blue down below here are my locations related to that entity. So since I'm in USA Company 1, when I hit my location dropdown, I will only see USA Company 1 as the parent, or Colorado, Florida, or New York. I will not see Newfoundland, Ontario, and Quebec because they are not related to this entity. And this substructure, by the way, I even have Newfoundland broken down into like Corner Brook and St. John's. I am from Newfoundland, so I did pick that being a little bit egotistical. They roll up automatically. So Corner Brook and St. John's, I can view a P&L or a balance sheet or a GL detail report for just St. John's or just for Corner Brook. But if I choose to look at a P&L for Newfoundland, it will inherently have Corner Brook and St. John's included in it, unless I make an extra selection and say, I don't want to see that. I only want to see things that got tagged directly to Newfoundland. That's what I kind of mean about all the flexibility you could want. This gives you like all the options, right? Now, what's interesting about this company, and again, sorry, if I'm putting in an AR invoice for company one and I say, oh, I meant to be in Canada, I don't have to log out and log back in. I can just click my drop down list here. I can click Canada. That will bring me into my Canadian company. Not only that, it brings me right to the screen that I was on before. So really custom switch from one to the other. So it just loads me into my Canada company, and here I am. I could have every company open here on separate tabs. I have seen people do it. Personally, I don't do it because it's so easy to switch back and forth. Like it's almost easier to just click this drop down and pick your entity than it is to look up at your tabs. And once you get so many, they get smaller and try to pick out which one is for which. But that's kind of the idea. It's really, really convenient. And the other question we always get is if I have this structure, I might have users that should be able to do work in USA Company 1 and USA Company 2, but I don't want them to be able to see or enter or do anything in any other company. You can control that really, really easy. So you can go on a user's profile and say they only have access to one company or two companies or three companies. And when they log in here and they click this drop down, they would only see the companies that you've given them permission to view. So you get that data valid or that kind of control as well. So that's how it's convenient for the first way it's convenient for multi-entity. The next is if you have multiple companies and they operate in different currencies, like in this one, all of your companies can report in their own functional currency. So Australia is in Australian dollars, Canada in Canadian dollars, South Africa in the rand, and so on. And at any point in time, I could create a set of consolidation books that will consolidate the financials for any number of these entities into whatever currency I choose in the world. It doesn't even have to be one that you see here right now. I could go pick the Mexican peso and consolidate one of my companies or two of them or all of them into pesos if I needed to do that. So you get the global consolidation module if you need it. It will do any elimination entries of intercompany accounts and so on, like a full-blown consolidation module. The next convenient thing is if you have this structure, you almost 100% have intercompany transactions. Maybe it's you transfer money out of a bank account owned by one company into a bank account owned by another, or the USA company doesn't have a Canadian dollar bank account and certain vendors make you pay them in Canadian dollars. So you pay it from, you put the AP transaction in this company, but you pay it from a bank account that is owned by the Canadian company. The system will automatically do the due to and due from sides of that entry, the intercompany transaction, as you post the payment, and it will do that on both sides of the company. So it's fully automated. The easiest example I can show you of that would be to do a funds transfer here. So I will do a funds transfer and say I'm going to transfer money out of bank account 100, which is owned by company 100, into bank account 400, which is owned by company 400. They are made that way by design. Say we're transferring out 25,000 Canadian dollars. We're putting 25,000 Canadian dollars into the Canadian dollar bank account. That only equals 17,875 US dollars. You see my exchange rate down here is 0.715. The exchange rate date is today. These exchange rates come in automatically into the system. I didn't import any exchange rates today. I don't need to. They are sourced from Oanda, just so you're aware. This is where Sage will pull your exchange rates from. Very well trusted, usually accepted by all auditors. And away you go. Now, this is fully historical as well. I could change this back, say, oh, we done this transfer on the 21st, so we should use the 21st. Now, realistically, on a funds transfer, you're probably going to have to change this exchange rate to match the rate that the bank used, because the chance of the bank using the exact same rate that Oanda says is pretty slim. So maybe the bank used 7,11194 instead of 7,111 or 7,112, right? You can just override it here if you need to. And then we can go ahead and save that funds transfer. And with that, Intacct will do the journal entry on both sides of the company to record the money out of the bank account owned by company 1 into the bank account owned by company 4, and it will also do the intercompany, the due to, due from for you down at the bottom. So really, it'll do that anytime any transaction is entered that affects multiple entities. It will automatically do the intercompany due to, due from for you. Moving away from all of the interentity stuff and the foreign exchange, I'm going to jump into the purchasing module. So the purchasing module is essentially just a more powerful AP module. Okay. So if you don't need what I'm about to show, don't sweat it too much. You can just use the AP module, and it's a very good AP module. It has approval policies built into it. If you're in the US, it can handle 1099s. If you want to issue ACH payments or EFT payments in Canada or bank file payments in the UK, it can do all of that. You don't have to worry about it. The system's ready to go. It doesn't send it to the bank. It just generates the file for you and you upload it to your bank, but generating the file is half the battle. And it's just overall a really good AP module. The reason we show the purchasing module over the AP module is because most clients we get are looking for some sort of control on their procurement process. They want a workflow of like purchase requisitions to purchase orders. If you're an inventory company, you'll have a receipt of your shipment and then into the invoice. They're looking for the three-way or four-way match between the documents when they do this. They're looking for some controls so you can say that, before I get to a purchase order, I must have a purchase requisition. I might have that turned on here if I look at, yeah, so you see how next to my PO right here, I don't have a plus button? That's because on this document, I've said it has to be sourced from a purchase requisition or a quote or a travel or authorization. I've left the rest of them off just to show the flexibility here, but you can enforce that. You can have different workflows. You don't just need to have one. You can see under my purchase requisition, I have a purchase requisition, I have a quote, and I have a travel authorization. Now, the most common reason for something like this is maybe your purchase requisitions are related to inventory or projects. So when these go through the approval policy, maybe they should go to the project manager or an inventory manager. But when it comes to travel authorizations, we want those to get approved by the employee that's entering it or being tagged at the line level. We want it to get approved by their manager. So when we create multiple documents in Intacct, each document can have its own approval policy assigned to it. So it really allows you to get flexible with your approval policies and set them up as you need them. So you get the full three-way or four-way match, whatever number of steps you have in your workflow. You get flexible approval policies that can all happen in the system. There's emails go out to approvers if they want them. Then when they approve it or decline it, an email goes back to the original submitter. And there are some features that help with keying time and keying errors. So if we take a look at some of that, and it all has a really good audit trail, which is one of the biggest perks of it. So if I come to my list of purchase requisitions, this is just a list of the purchase requisitions that have been issued in this company. Over in the state, we see a few different states. We see converted, we see submitted, we see a draft, and we see a pending. So converted means that this document was entered. It went through any approval policies that were deemed necessary on this transaction. It got approved, and then we issued a PO. At the very least, this has moved to the PO stage of our workflow. Now, if we want to see, did it go through an approval policy, and is it at the PO stage, or has it gone further than the PO stage? We can click on the word converted, and that will bring us into a history of this document. So when this loads itself up, and again, Intacct is not really ever this slow. So this one didn't go through any approval policy. This one got entered. I don't believe it. I don't believe that to be true. So it must be true. Okay. So if we're looking at a purchase requisition and we want to see, did it go through an approval policy or not? And how far along is it? Is it at the PO stage? Is it further? We can click on the word converted. Apology for the jumping back and forth there. And we can see, first of all, this transaction has gone, it started as a purchase requisition. It got converted into a purchase order, and it's actually also gone to the invoice stage. Here's our three-way match. And I can view this three-way match from the PO or from the vendor invoice. And from all of these documents, I can view the PO. By clicking on the PO, it opens up the PO. If I wanted to view the invoice, I can click the invoice. And again, from the invoice stage or the PO stage, if I click on my history tab, it again shows me that full three-way match. Now I can tell from a glance that this document didn't actually go through any approval policy because I don't have an approval history button up here. But if I come out and come to a submitted transaction, I do have an approval history button right here. And this does stay here even after a document is approved. So you get the audit trail on your approvals. So you want to look at this and see why it's not approved yet or who it's waiting for approval from. We can click on the approval history and we can see that this is being routed to the transaction project manager, which happens to be Emma, and then it's going to go through a value approval policy. So how did it get picked to go to a project manager approval? So what happens is in the background, we say these transactions are going to go to a project manager. But of course, the project manager is going to change from project to project. So if we come in and we look at this purchase requisition and we look at the line level, we can see that a particular project was chosen for this PO. If we look at that particular project itself, we will be able to see that Emma is the manager. So when we submit this, the system looks and it says, okay, project manager approvals are turned on. Look at this project. Emma is the manager of this project, so route that to Emma. And then it's gone through a value approval. So the value approval is based off of the total value of the document, and you set your different levels of approval. Like level 1 can be 0 to $5,000, or it can be 0 to $500,000. And then level 2 picks up where level 1 left off, level 3 picks up where level 2 left off, and so on. And on those value approvals, you can make them direct or progressive. So if you put in a transaction that falls under level 3 of your thresholds, with the direct method, it skips level 1, skips level 2, goes right to a level 3 person. And if it's progressive, it goes first to level 1, then to level 2, and then on to level 3. So you can get those value approvals and you can get the managerial approvals, and the managerial approvals are available on the project dimension, the location dimension, the department dimension, or the employee dimension. So it's really a good amount of flexibility there. And the other way that you can set up a layer of approval is you can say it goes directly to a group of people or a particular person. So you could say in your workflow, like first it goes to the project manager, then it goes to the department manager, then it goes to the location manager, and those can be in any order, by the way. And then after those 3 people approve it, it's going to go to Matthew for approval. He just gets final look at all of our POs or purchase requisitions, whatever document they are. So that's the submitted state and the converted state. The draft state is someone was in the middle of entering this purchase requisition, something interrupted them, they had to get up and leave their desk. So rather than having to close their screen out and lose the progress they had, they can click draft on it. It just saves it as a draft record. It's not submitted for approval. If it were a posting document, it wouldn't post. It just saves it as it is so they can come back and finish it later. So that's a nice convenient feature. And then we have the one in pending state. So what this would mean is this transaction went in and it was entered, it got approved, and now we're able to issue a PO for this. So rather than having to come look up the PO and see all the details that are on it, we can just click on convert. We can say we want to convert this into a standard purchase order that will transfer all of the information off of the original requisition onto the order, and away we go. Now, if this were maybe we only received, it's a quantity of 1, so it's a bad example. If this were a quantity of 10, it would make more sense. I'm going to say maybe we only received half of these services. I could say I only received half and put in 0.5. And what that's going to do is do a partial conversion of my purchase requisition, as long as it is configured correctly. I don't truly know if it is in here or not, but we can do partial conversions. Probably won't know until it gets, actually, no, it says converted. So it's not, I don't have partial conversions on, but just to show you functionality and that it's available and that I'm not just pulling wool over your eyes. If I come into any document, I can tell the system whether or not we're going to do partial conversion. It's actually on for the blanket PO, but I didn't convert a blanket PO. I converted a purchase requisition. So we can handle partial conversions. So you get a really strong workflow capability, really flexible approval policies. In this module, there are so many more things that I could even talk about, like vendor price lists, variance, variance allowances. Like if we put in a purchase requisition, when we get the PO, we want the system to check to make sure that it's within 5% of the original document. And if it's not, and you set those percentages, by the way, like you get to choose the percentage. It's not always 5%. If it's not, we're going to do something about it. We're going to flag it. We can create additional posting transactions in the transaction currency if you're a multi-currency environment. We can handle price schedules, vendor price lists, fixed vendor discounts. We can do automatic price variance posting. So if you do use a price list and you buy something that is under the value that's on the price list or over the value that's on the price list, it'll do an additional entry for you. How do we handle changes to an approved document? Does it need to go back through reapproval or not? There's automation in here. We can handle 1099s if you're in the US, and there's even more in here. I'm just going very quick because I really struggle to demo Intacct within an hour. So I'm going to stop it there for today because we're at the hour and everybody's very busy. What I want to say is I don't want anybody to just, see this demo. I hope you liked what you saw, but I don't even like to tell people that we're scratching the surface of Intacct here. We are not. We are glossing over the surface of everything that Intacct could do. I could spend an hour demoing just the purchasing module easily. I demo Intacct 2 to 3 times a week, and I don't ever schedule a demo for less than 2 hours, but we can't expect people to give us 2 hours of their day every single week. So we try to keep it to an hour and show some high level stuff. So like the modules that I did show and talk about, I went really, really fast. I know I went really fast, but in those modules that I did talk about, there's more functionality that I could have shown. And on top of that, there are so many functionalities in here that I didn't even get to mention. So just to kind of highlight some of those, Intacct has a full-blown revenue contract management system, fully compliant with 606R revenue recognition standards. And of course, if it has that, then it must have a revenue recognition module. It does if you need RevRec, but you don't have revenue contracts, you can just purchase RevRec. You set up your categories and your templates. And when you put in an AR invoice, you code it to deferred revenue and you put it on a schedule and you let the system do the rest, automatically recognize your revenue based off of your template and your schedule. There's a full-blown project costing and billing module in here where you can have projects with tasks, task resources, project resources. We can do scheduling, we can do resource capacity, we can do Gantt charts, we can automate your billing process, we can run a lot of different project reports. There's an employee expense module, kind of comes hand in hand with the project module, but sometimes you want employee expenses without projects. There's an employee time module, again, kind of comes with the projects module. And using this time module, we can automatically calculate your billable rate, your non-billable rate. You can put billable rates per employee on separate projects. So on one project, my time could be billed back at $150 an hour, but maybe on a different project, it's just $75 an hour. And on a third one, it's $250 an hour. And you can list the employees for every project. There's a full inventory module. So the inventory module can handle warehousing. It can handle bins, aisles, rows, and zones within your warehouses. We can handle warehouse transfers. We can handle all of your documents. We can do buy to order and drop ship. We can handle serial numbers, barcode scanning, expiration dates, inventory cycles, inventory valuation, inventory totals, you name it, as long as you are not doing manufacturing, right? A very good inventory module. But if you're doing manufacturing, not really going to get you there, but no manufacturing, great module. There is a fixed asset management module to manage your assets. We can handle taxes in Canada, the UK, Australia, Ireland, and we can build custom tax solutions. If you are in the US and you have taxes, you probably want an integration with Avalara. There is a budgeting module where we can bring your budgets in. We can do actuals versus budgets. We can do some light forecasting. There is an add-on to the budget module where you can do scenario building, what if scenarios. What if we hire 5 employees in this month? How does that affect our P&L? There's an order entry module, which is basically the equivalent of the purchasing module, just on the revenue side of your business. Less approvals. There's no approvals in the AR within Intacct. There's a prepaid expense amortization module, which you don't see here. I just don't have it enabled here. And there's even more things in that I could just go on and on and on about. But just keep in mind that very high level demo today, very quick, very to the point. And if there's anything else you want to see regarding Intacct, all you have to do is let us know, and we would be more than happy to do a more customized demo. And with that, I will thank you for letting me ramble for an extra 2 minutes and see if we have any questions from our audience. So I don't see any questions coming through today. So we will go ahead and we will end it there. And again, I'll thank everybody for your time today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and week, and we certainly hope to hear from you soon. See you, everybody. Have a great one.